Everyone, hi Surge. Welcome to Surge Online Part 3. I hope you're enjoying our Google Classroom and all the things that we've gotten to do in the last couple of weeks. Hope everyone is doing well. I wish I could see your faces, but we will check in later tonight on Zoom with your small groups, and so I really can't wait to catch up with you guys there. But tonight, we are going to be wrapping up our unit on mental health, which we started at the beginning of March. And even though things haven't exactly gone to plan, we have been able to cover a lot of topics under this umbrella since we started. So just a quick recap of what we've covered so far. We've talked about the verse in 1 John, which reminds us that we love because he first loved us. And if we are created and loved by such an incredible God, then we are also likewise called to find ways to love ourselves, even though it is very hard and sometimes feels impossible. We also have talked about John the Baptist and people like him who were given in examples of scripture, people who may have been perceived as like outcasts or just different from the people that they spent their lives with and the people around them. But we talked about how Jesus found them. He found these people. He met them right where they are, and he loved them for exactly who they were made to be. And then last week, we talked about the Israelites escaping Egypt, being led to the promised land by Moses, how they were surrounded by oppression and fear and hopelessness. And then, in the midst of all that, God led them to safety. And they realized that God and Moses and a whole army of other people had been fighting for them all along. They just couldn't see it at the time. And so this week, we're going to end this unit by talking about circles. So just bear with me. I'm going somewhere with this, and I guarantee it's going to be great for you. But I want to tell you all, and you probably already know it, I grew up in the city of Alton, which is about 2.5 hours away from Bloomington Normal. It's just across the Mississippi River from St. Louis, which is a good-sized city. Alton is known for a lot of things. It's got a lot of history. Again, it borders the Mississippi River, so there are a lot of like town attractions that are associated with that. We've got like a riverboat casino downtown. Apparently it's a big deal. There are lots of reasons why people know what Alton is. But for the people that have lived here, we know Alton for something else. And being that it's a somewhat small town, there's a road that acts as like a hub for downtown. And it really gets you to all the essential parts of the city if you take it. It's a roundabout. And most of you have probably been on a roundabout when you drive through town at some point in your life. But I actually have a video of the Alton Circle, and I want you to see it, so I'm gonna show it now. So, as you can see, if you go down the Alton Circle and you take the first exit, it will lead you to the 2 hospitals that we have in town. If you take the second exit, you get to downtown Alton, where the riverfront is, and there are a lot of restaurants and city life down there. The third exit takes you to a popular Alton neighborhood, which I had a lot of friends who lived there when I was in high school. And then the fourth exit takes you to the community middle school and the dental school and the Alton History Museum. And so I would say that if you live in Alton, you may find yourself driving through the circle pretty often. And if you are like me, when I was in high school, you and your friends would find it fun to drive around and around the circle and see how many consecutive times you could make a lap before you got bored or before someone had to pee and you had to stop. Our record, by the way, was 32 times around the circle before we had to stop. But following this timeless Alton tradition, it has so often in my life been like a metaphor for how I live. I've thought about that a lot in my adult life. And I want to know if you've ever felt this way similarly. You know, we're all so incredibly busy. Sometimes I listen to you guys talk about your schedules and I just wonder how you do it. You've got 10 after-school extracurricular activities. You're in musicals and plays and bands and sports. You're juggling part-time jobs. You go to Surge. You have boyfriends and girlfriends. And at the end of the day, it's just a lot. And I get it. Because my own life so often feels the same way. I feel like most days I get up and I go to work and I have meetings and I get things done. And then by 10 o'clock at night, I look back and realize that it feels like the whole day was just on autopilot. Or that I was just driving in a circle, around and around until I stopped at night to sleep. And I think you and I are one and the same in that respect. I think that for us, life so often just feels like that circle. It's the hub that leads to everything else, or the road that we get on day after day just to accomplish what's expected of us. But as you know, now we're in a different time. Now we're living in this space where our cars are just stopped in that circle. We're not moving forward, going round and around anymore. And I know that that complicates things. And I know that these times are hard for you. I know that not being able to keep going around and around your circle, it's tough. And it can quiet things down in your life just enough to bring up all kinds of grief and deep thinking that you push down in your everyday life. So, I just want to say that wherever you are right now, no matter where your car is stopped, I know that it's a struggle. And I'm with you in that struggle. I'm praying for you, and I'm here for you to work through this. But I'm also, in the midst of it, reminded about another group of people who seemed to be called to walk in circles. And these were people like us who were always, in the midst of everything else that they were doing, they were called to a higher purpose. It's in the book of Joshua. We're told a story about Joshua himself being sent by God to lead the Israelites on a pilgrimage around the walls of Jericho. God sent the Israelites to walk in circles. And as they did, they were instructed to carry trumpets of ram's horns, and then on the seventh day to shout as they marched around the city. And it's a really long passage of scripture, and I'm sure Miss Kathy has taught you this story before. So I'm not going to read the whole thing tonight, but I do encourage you to look it up. It's Joshua chapter 6, verses 1 through 27. And it tells this incredible story of a people sent by God to march in a circle. And as they did, they were instructed to make as much noise as possible. It was over and over and over. They were supposed to march for 7 whole days, doing the same thing each time until on the last day, this incredible victory happens for Jesus. So I know right now we are all in much of a different place than we were 2 months ago. I know that our world just doesn't look the same. But what we can learn from these stories about circles tonight is this. Sometimes, when there's nowhere else to turn, you just keep going. Even when it's hard, and even when your world doesn't seem to make any sense. You get in your car, and you keep going. I know that's hard right now. I know that nothing in your world seems to make any sense. I know that we are all dealing with the depth of an uncertainty and anxiety over what's to come. But we have been given a gift from God in the midst of this, and it's the ability and the will to keep going. But I want you to hear something else about your journey forward. I want you to hear that it's not always a race. Sometimes you're barely inching along. Sometimes, when you do keep going, it's barely even at a crawl. And we've all been there. Whether it's the days when you can hardly pry yourself out of bed to go to school and to face the day, or the days when you feel the weight of the world on your shoulders, like a dark cloud is following you everywhere you go. Or, more relevant to the moment right now, the days when you don't feel much hope, because there's no end in sight to the hardships that we're facing. But even then, we're called to keep going. I can imagine that the Israelites had to dig down deep to find the will to march around the wall all that time. They didn't know what would happen next or if it would end in even more tragedy for them. But For us, the part of the story that's necessary for us to take note of is the ending. It's the victory. It's when the walls of Jericho came crashing down as they played a triumphant song, and they shouted God's glory around the wall over and over and over. So please hear this. The journey that you are on, even when it's hard to imagine, it will end in victory. Because God is already fighting for you. There will be a day when we can open our doors and dance together in celebration of all that God has done. And the day is coming soon, and I can't wait. But until then, if all you can do is just crawl along, willing yourself forward inch by inch, then I'm still proud of you. And I'm still cheering on your movement each step of the way. And I'm crawling with you, right where you're at. Because Surge, no matter what keep going means for you, you'll never be alone. We'll always be in this with you. And God is calling the person that you are right now, in all your mess and all your glory alike, to keep going and keep fighting, because the victory is coming. You know, I find my victory every day when I remember that God called me here to all of you. I find it when I see how you are all made to shine in this kingdom. I see it in your own sweet victories, how you all bring something so special to us and to our ministry, something we wouldn't survive without. And God sees the same thing. I know he does. He has made you right where you are, exactly who you are, unapologetically yourself, for victory. So keep going and keep moving, because we're in this with you.